everyone, and welcome to SCB Means Business, the podcast where we meet leaders of great companies that are making a difference in their community. I'm Holly Schroeder, and your host today from the Santa Cruz Valley Economic Development Corporation. And I am very pleased to welcome Paul Butler today, founder of Newleaf Training and Development. So welcome. Thanks for joining me today, Paul.
Thanks, Holly. I'm delighted to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, where to start? We always have so much fun when we chat. But why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about what Newleaf does, what your focus area is in the training and development world?
Yes, certainly. So we're a staff training and leadership development company, and we really focus on three areas of helping organizations. The first is to help people better manage themselves, so programs such as time management. And then we have another category of programs to do with leading others, which obviously is all about leadership and teamwork and conflict resolution. And then one of the areas that I think is quite unique is we do a lot of work on the third category we refer to as growing business acumen. And that's where we help employees understand the language of numbers and how their work impacts the money-making model of an organization.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there and talk about. But let's do a little bit of your founder story because I love it, of course, because of what it says about Santa Clarita. But you weren't born here, right? So we could tell that from the accent. So tell us a little bit about how you came to the U.S. and how you came to Santa Clarita and came to found Newleaf.
Yeah, I'd be delighted to. So I'm originally from England. If anybody knows the geography very well, I'm from pretty close to Stratford-upon-Avon, where William Shakespeare's from, or Billy Shakes, as we used to call him as schoolboys, and he's rather rebellious at the time, not so much now. But I used to work for Hilton Hotels, and my background is finance, and I was a regional finance director for them in Europe. So I had about 60 of the hotels. And they asked me to come over here after 9/11, which of course seems like a lifetime ago. And I came over here as the finance director for Hilton Honors, which is now the world's largest loyalty program. Hilton's worldwide headquarters was based in Beverly Hills. Hilton gave us a relocation agent and they showed us all sorts of areas. And my wife and I and our two children, who were very, very young then, we just fell in love with Santa Clarita, specifically Valencia. And so we lived here for 2 years on a work visa. We were here on a H1B, which is a professional work visa. Absolutely loved it here. Did that assignment for 2 years. Went back to England in 2003. And then my wife and I said, G. Well, we don't say G in England. I'm just translating now because I'm completely bilingual. But we said, G, and on the basis you've only got one life on this earth, why not be where you want to be, do what you want to be doing with who you want to be doing it with. And we went down to our local village store. We bought a binder, Holly, and on the binder we wrote on it the Get Back to Santa Clarita plan. And it took us about 2.5 years to make it all happen, but we moved back here in February 2006. So it's now obviously February 2022 we're recording this. So this is 16 years ago this month.
So, and did you found Newleaf once you got back, or was that how you made the transition? And when did Newleaf come into the picture?
Oh, yeah. Forgive me for not clarifying that. So when I went back to England in 2003, I joined Marriott Hotels, which was very strange for me to say that, being a Hilton person to join Marriott. That was like joining the enemy. And I joined Marriott as a regional finance director and was essentially doing the job I was doing before we come here. And it was really in that period where Marriott were very big fans of leadership development, and I attended courses like the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and one or two other game-changing leadership programs that Marriott did. And it really set me thinking about, gosh, I really want to get back to America. How can we do it? And a quick funny story, my wife and I, we had this beautiful old cottage in central England, and we said, let's get back to America. And she said, well, what kind of business shall we start? And I had a list of ideas. And right at the top of the list was staff training and leadership development. And my mother was a high school teacher in my high school. So I think it was kind of in my DNA. And I think I'm a teacher at heart. And that was like idea number one on the list. And my wife said, yeah, let's just do that. So that's how we did it. So we We officially started the company in England in terms of all the legal things that we needed to do 5,000 miles away. But we physically started business operations in, as I say, the February 2006. And I'm just ever so grateful for, individuals like Craig Peters with CBRE. Carl Kanowski was and still is our corporate attorney. Elizabeth Hopp, who's now retired at the Bank of Santa Clarita. I mean, all of those people trusted us to start the business before we even had the legal right to be here. And they just, were just fantastic in helping us make the move happen.
Well, there's a whole place we could go there around the importance of having trusted advisors as a startup business and as you grow your business, and the great support that you got. So let's talk a little bit about the growth path, because you've grown successfully for those past many years, and now have trainers and clients across the country, and maybe beyond that.
Just to amplify what you mentioned there about trusted advisors, with me coming from a big company background, because prior to Hilton and Marriott, I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers. I always thought about our small business as being a big business kind of packed into a small business suit. So it really kind of made sense to me from day one to almost have a kind of a board of directors, as it were. And that's what we had through some of those individuals that I mentioned to you, and still have many of those relationships and many more. So that was vitally important for us. With regard to growth, I mean, I'm so grateful to say this, Holly. We've now served clients in 28 states, China, India, Western Europe, Australia. We've served about 275 clients. Most of our clients are well-known organizations, either large corporates or large educational entities, both private and public, and some very large non-profit entities, and also some city governments in California. But about 5 years ago, we opened up a second office over in Orlando, Florida. So that's just so awesome to, in effect, be able to replicate ourselves over on the southeast, I guess that would be, rather than the southwest. So
you mentioned the areas where you do training, and given your background as a finance director, I think you're right. It's really unique to have sort of that business acumen set of classes. Just describe that a little bit, and what made you create that as part of your offerings.
Well, thanks, Holly. Yeah. So if I could, just backing up slightly, the reason why we built the business upon those three channels, as it were, managing yourself, leading others, and growing business acumen, was because those are the three inhibitors, or the three barriers that we saw really impacted people when, I was an employee. Because you can only get so far based on your technical competence. And over and above that, you've got to be good at managing yourself. We all know individuals that are technically very competent, but they can't manage themselves. And obviously, if you're really good at managing yourself, you might get given that noble, honourable responsibility to have formal, explicit authority over others, which essentially is leadership. But is there anything else? Is there any other area where you can make an even greater contribution to the organisation? And that's that third area of growing business acumen. What we've observed is that someone can go to the highest high of an organisation. They can traverse across departments, traverse across the globe, even traverse across industries when they've got a sharp business acumen. So essentially, we do three things within that growing business acumen category. The first one is a course that I'm sure you've probably heard of before, called Finance for Non-Financial Managers. The second area where we do a lot of work on is a program we've created called Business Financial Intelligence. And that's where we try and connect employees' work to the money-making model of the organization, get them to understand things like the income statement, the balance sheet, how their work impacts those key metrics, and to come up with ideas about what they could do to improve the profit performance, the productivity performance of the organization. As a quick, by the way, what's really cool there is working then with the human resources people within inside those organizations to look at reward mechanisms, because obviously what you reward tends to get repeated. So if you want people to have an entrepreneurial spirit, you've obviously got to reward when those numbers are coming through. And the third and final area, which I think is really cool and quite unique, is we do a lot of work on earnings call debriefs, obviously for publicly traded companies. And that's where we'll partner with usually a very senior leader in the organization and actually debrief the earnings call, because as I'm sure you and I would agree, the vast majority of employees don't understand the language of an earnings call. And so we help demystify that and translate the information, again, into very pragmatic, very practical terms. And just the last part on that as well, what's really neat is we work with some large corporates, global corporates, where we do the earnings call debriefs not only in North America, but also for EMEA and APAC, and then Latin America. So it's really cool when we do the ones in Latin America or Asia Pacific where they have a translator working with us. So that's always quite funny. That's quite fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, it is, it's really unique because, even though companies, may offer incentives, whether it's a stock option or, or a bonus related to company performance, employees, a lot of times, especially in the largest companies, and you're talking about a lot about public companies, there's just no connection or understanding really about how you connect those dots from somebody maybe who's on the front line.
Yeah, definitely. I think Sam Walton, actually, the founder of Walmart, said something along these lines, that basically it says communicate everything you can to employees, because once they care, there's no stopping them. And if I've noticed any secret sauce, to use that phrase, within organizations that embrace things like growing business acumen, it's this passion around communicating the performance and, of course, then wrapping incentive programs around that. And I found it's been a real game changer with the organizations that we've been blessed to work with on that particular area.
So let's, I guess we're working backwards a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about the leadership class and the managing yourself classes. And I'm particularly interested in how have those changed, or how have people's, how they're receiving those classes changed, or what they're struggling with over the course of the pandemic? Because, managing yourself when suddenly you might be in situations where you're alone a lot more, or you're leading suddenly you're leading a remote team or a hybrid team that you may not have had that experience with before. How does that work?
We've had to adjust the delivery platforms to do them as either online or obviously on site. When it comes to doing online learning and development, what we found is people's attention span. And so we've taken, for example, what would traditionally be, say, a half day on site seminar. We've broken that up into 2 75-minute online webinars. And we've taken a full day on site seminar. Some of our programs are full day. And we've then broken that up into 3 90-minute webinars, either on the same day, or people will do them as spaced learning over, say, 3 weeks. So that's the first thing about the actual delivery platform that's changed. The other thing is a couple of our programs specifically, we've got a program called Supervisory Management Essentials, obviously does what it says on the tin. And then we have another program called Presentation and Facilitation Skills. And what we've done is we've actually created virtual versions of both of those programs, because obviously the skill set or the mindset for someone to be able to supervise the work of others is to some extent a little bit different when you're working with remote teams, either geographically in the US or obviously other parts of the world, or obviously with the lockdown. And then the presentation and facilitation skills, of course, it wouldn't take a genius to realize that the skills necessary to be a good leader as a presenter in person are somewhat different to presenting online. And I'm sure you and I can attest to many, many dreadful times we've suffered poor presentations online and all that goes with that. But also facilitating a meeting. It's difficult enough to have a great facilitator in meetings generally. It's one of the most common complaints of employees, of course, is how meetings are dreadfully run. Well, you can multiply that by a factor of 10 when you put that thing online.
No, absolutely. Getting engagement in a meeting so people know why they're there and, making sure people who have something to contribute do so online can be really challenging.
I think the other thing I'd like to just share there, Holly, in response to your question about what's changed, come at it from another angle in terms of what has not changed. If you were to go on the front page of our website, one of our USPs, our unique selling propositions, is we tag ourselves as being principle-based staff training and leadership development. So I'm no philosopher, remember I'm a recovering accountant. But, principles to me are those things that are universal. They apply to all. They're objective. They're not subjective. They exist with or without our permission. And so all of our programs have got principles underneath them. And of course, principles don't change. They're kind of timeless. So for example, when we're teaching, we do a lot of work on conflict resolution. And if you look at the principle underneath that, it's like, in times of conflict, don't just look out for your own interests, but look out for the interests of others. I mean, Stephen Covey borrowed from that principle in The 7 Habits, when in habit number 5, he said, seek first to understand and then to be understood.
Right.
So we don't really teach, temporal training techniques. I mean, we don't kind of go with we don't just blow with the wind. Like a few years ago, there was a lot of focus on emotional intelligence. Now, obviously, there's a lot of work on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And we just don't kind of blow with the wind. I mean, we really teach timeless principles. Obviously, the method of delivery changes, like I mentioned, about on-site, online, but the principle underneath the program. For example, another quick one would be in time management. The principle, of course, that you can take to any corner in the world is that you can't manage time. I mean, time marches on and waits for no one, as it says. But really, the best that we can do is manage our priorities based on what's of highest importance to us as a leader, and obviously the different roles that we have in life. So that's focusing a little bit on what hasn't changed, even despite this incredible time of change we've had in the last 2 years at least.
It is important to remember what hasn't changed, and to that a lot of these things are timeless. I think that's a great approach to it, because we can get so focused just on what's not working. And remember that there's a whole lot of things we were doing that we were working, and, we need to keep doing those and those timeless principles. I love that. Who are your trainers? I mean, obviously you said you set up an office in Florida. So how do you find these diamonds in the rough that can bring this timeless wisdom to your clients? That,
Holly, is just a mystery to me too, actually, when I look back about it, because each of the people that work for us, we only engage employees, by the way. A lot of our competitors, they'll use independent contractors, but there's a little funny story in that. If we get a few minutes, I'll tell you about why we landed on that stone. But so all of our folks are employees, they're not contractors. But they've just come to us through a myriad of ways, really, just through social circles, professional associations. Like there's a couple of professional associations germane to our industry. Like there's the Association of Talent Development, ATD, that I'm sure you've heard of, or PIRA, which is the Professional Institute for Human Resource Associates. I know the EDC is very much involved with those. So that's how we've kind of come across people. And there's things actually that when I go to see somebody with a view to potentially hiring them, I have a kind of a grid of things that I'm not looking for. So it's almost like check. Yeah, like don't call us, we'll call you. Because I find I wouldn't want this to sound arrogant, but I find there's so many mediocre trainers because it's such a low barrier to entry. I mean, someone could hang out a shingle tomorrow and become a coach, become a trainer. But I've found that those diamonds, as it were, that you've mentioned, those kind of needles in a haystack, it's better to kind of winnow out the things that you don't want. And we've been left with, just some people that I'm really, really proud of.
Well, and I imagine they need to learn the principles that you're teaching, or you need to confirm they know the principles that you're teaching and practicing, and so that they can then teach. Because one of the things I found in trainers that are challenging is when they don't they don't sort of do what they're teaching, or they don't really have the experience. Like they don't have that business acumen that you guys are teaching. And so you're not connecting it. I think when you have that personal experience and working in business, then you can bring that more to your training.
That's so true, Holly, actually, because what you've stirred me to think about there is one of the items that's on our must-have list is we look for people that have had real world experience, and we're looking for someone that's got 10, 15, 20 years plus real world experience. I think there's nothing worse, if I could be so bold, to be sitting in a room, if you're an employee going through some training or sitting online, doing some training online, and it's very evident that the trainer has never had a real job with any real responsibilities. I mean, they might be academically brilliant. They might have all of the qualifications. They might have a PhD in organizational development, but they've never actually had a real job in terms of the stuff that you and I would have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So we always look for people that have real world experience as well as having appropriate qualifications.
So what's next for you guys? And as you look ahead, what are the issues that companies are dealing with or that individuals are dealing with that, might be future training programs or coaching or what they might need? I mean, how do you, are we in sort of it's what hasn't changed, or are you also seeing trends about new needs emerging that have come up maybe due to the pandemic or due to other circumstances?
I think I would probably just echo what I've mentioned earlier on in that we really don't go chasing kind of shiny objects, as it were. Like if somebody said tomorrow, oh, there's this new XYZ thing and it's all the jazz and you've got to get into this, we look at those things very, very skeptically. I think probably the short answer to your question is by building the quality of relationships that we have with such good quality clients, we become such trusted partners to them. In fact, the job title that we give each of our employees, we're all the same. And we call ourselves client partners because we really genuinely try and partner with our clients. So I think by really listening to our clients, it's not so much that we're coming up with any newfangled, programs. But if a client says, well, we really have this particular need, could you help us with this need? Where it might be, like a doctor really, where it's like a real precision operation where they really need X and they only want to do it in like 75 minutes and it's just for these people. And maybe we need to do it like in, Spanish and English and, maybe, there's different delivery platforms. Like we have to do a train the trainer, or we have to do, a train the trainer followed by us working with some of their individual employees on a coaching basis.
Paul, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. So thanks for joining me today, and I'm so happy for all of the success that you've had with Newleaf, and I know will continue to have. So, and happy that you came back to Santa Clarita. So maybe as we wrap, what is it that drew you back, or what is it that you love most that brought you back here to the Santa Clarita Valley?
Well, first of all, we just love Santa Clarita. We think it's such a great city. We think it's such a well-run city. Obviously, the weather is just beautiful. Our kids really enjoyed going to school here in the Santa Clarita school system. And then subsequent to that, our son went to Chapman University down in Orange, and he's graduated now. So he's off the payroll as a fully paid taxpayer. And our daughter went to Azusa Pacific, and likewise, she's in a good job as well. And again, we just love the vibrancy of living in Santa Clarita, specifically, obviously, in terms of just how business friendly Santa Clarita is. And we've been in the same office, Holly, as you know, since day one, on Turney Road, just off Magic Mountain. And we wouldn't change anything, really. We are just so grateful for where we are in Santa Clarita. I just love it here.
Well, we are so glad that you decided to set up here and you have your world headquarters, especially as you have members of your team all over, and great success with the kids, finding some local Southern California universities, and wishing much success to them. So thanks again for joining me, Paul. Always a pleasure. And thanks to everybody for listening. Please subscribe to SCV Means Business wherever you get your podcasts, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.